I definitely see those people that come into therapy where they're not really there. They're going through the motions of being there because they want to be able to say that they tried, but there's been so much damage, right? And I think, like you said, the damage is in the communication.
Effective couples therapy does not mean that both people are walking out holding hands saying, I love you.
Hey, pod people, welcome to this week's episode of Why Do People Do That? We are excited to have our guest here today, Marissa Cohen, who is a relationship scientist and licensed marriage and family therapist. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to talk about relationships. We haven't really gotten to that topic yet.
No, but first I need you to explain what a relationship scientist is, because that is just fascinating.
So a relationship scientist is basically a person who studies the academic side of relationships. Relationship science is actually a multidisciplinary field. So I pull from biology, psychology, sociology, anthropology, and philosophy, basically all of the subjects to better understand what love is. And then we take that research and we apply it to couples living their everyday lives.
Am I putting you too much on the spot to ask what is love then?
I think that's a great question.
Well, do you have about 20 hours? But I guess if you had to distill it, it's a meta emotion comprised of a variety of different emotions that solves the need for human connection and human bonding.
So
Solves a need.
So it's a fascinating definition. So if we're going to break it down for our listeners, how would you describe what a meta emotion is? What does that mean?
So I don't want to just put love as an emotion because it's comprised of so many other things: happiness, sadness, at times, unrequited love. That's where the sadness comes in. So it's kind of this amalgam of different emotions that is basically looking at the drive to connect with other people or to affiliate with another person.
That's really interesting, the way that you describe it. So what you're saying...
Very academic.
Yes.
Right. But at the same time, it makes sense, right? So like what I'm hearing is that what you're saying is that people have a need that is, I guess, multifaceted in terms of all of the different drives that we have, all the different motivations that we have. And it all comes down to wanting to connect with another person on all of these different levels.
Yes. And basically, when I actually used to teach a class in the psychology department called Attachment and Attraction, the Science of Human Relationships. And one of the most basic things that we covered were the human needs. And the first need, and these are all the needs that kind of, underlie love. And the first need is the need for affiliation. And the need for affiliation is basically joining on with another person, which is especially high during times of uncertainty. And we try to, create a secure space with another individual so that we feel psychologically safe and secure.
So there are times, I guess, in our lives that we feel more unsafe than other times, and that's where we're driven for more connection.
Absolutely. And in fact, it's kind of sad that it often takes tragedy to really see people bond together. If you think about how New Yorkers came together after 9/11, hashtag Boston Strong after the Boston Marathon bombing. A really great everyday example I like to tell people is imagine that you are taking the F train in the city. And the reason why I say the F train is because for some reason, there are still those old train cars still in use on the F train. So the ones where the lights kind of flicker on and off when you're between stations. I don't want to raise the anxiety level too much, but if you think about it, when you sit on a train, there's usually a bunch of people, sensory overload, kind of focusing inward on themselves to block out all of that noise. So you'll have people with their AirPods on, or you'll have people reading a book, or maybe playing a game on their phone. Everyone's really just keeping to themselves. Now you're on this F train, you're in between stops. All of a sudden, the train comes to a halting stop and you hear that garbled message over the intercom and you don't quite know what it says and the lights go off. Okay, so you will start to notice all of a sudden people will pull out their AirPods, maybe shift in their seats, look around and say, excuse me, do you know what stop we're at? Like where we're going? Did you know what they said? And you like people right away, that is the need for affiliation, where all of a sudden we sense danger. We need to join on with another person that we normally would not have to basically find this safe port in a storm.
We feel safer with others.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
That's deep.
Deep, and also now my anxiety level has increased because I'm thinking of being stuck on the F train. But
Right. So bringing it outside the F train, right, in our everyday lives, right? Like if we were to think about all of the different things that happen in our lives on a day-to-day basis that really bring us into this place of needing connection for safety, right? Like one of the things I tend to say a lot because I learned it somewhere. I don't remember where I learned it, but I remember at the time it really resonating for me is that, you know, the need to be connected to others is tribal, right? Like going back, you know, back into like our origins of mankind, right? We needed to be part of a tribe, and that was part of our survival. And if our tribe left us behind, we would feel unsafe. How am I supposed to survive without my tribe, right? So I think it's just sort of innate in human beings.
yeah.
This need to be connected to other human beings.
It's also like the need for reassurance too. We feel most stable, most psychologically safe and secure when we are reassured. If you think about partnerships, that our partner is present. I'm an attachment researcher and also an attachment-based therapist. So it's from EFT, emotionally focused therapy. It's that those are questions. Are you available? Are you responsive? Are you engaged? And that's really kind of the glue that holds couples together.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking in terms of like the tribal thing, like those are our friendships. Those are, and you know, being on the F train, like that's like a, you know, a friendship. That's not necessarily looking for love.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that part of the relationships though? We have different levels of relationships,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I mean, it's interpersonal connection. So if you think of a relationship, I mean, one of the theories when we talk about what love is and what comprises love, you have the companionate or compassionate love, which is basically that deep friendship or close connection to another person. And then you have that added benefit of the passionate love. That's that like strong attraction or intense feeling. In relationship science, we actually call it limerence, which is the honeymoon phase of a relationship. And that's what draws you to that person where you're kind of viewing the world through rose-colored glasses.
It's
So
interesting.
I'm just thinking, you know, like that as relationships, like, you know, when you're in long-term relationships, like you see that cute old couple like sitting on the bench, like there's that companionship, but like not necessarily, you know, the passion has more than likely faded when you're 90 years old and just kind of holding hands and you're best friends. But
Although you can always bring it back.
Yeah.
But absolutely. I mean, you know, the honeymoon phase of relationships typically lasts about a year and a half, plus or minus 6 months is what the research shows, which if you think about it, that's actually a long time because people are kind of just like starry-eyed and, you know, really focused on that other person. And that's unfortunately the downside of that is you could miss a lot of the red flags in a relationship. But when that starts to die down, if you're not building up that companionate or compassionate love behind it, that's when the relationships are doomed to fall apart. You really need that strong friendship base to have a long-lasting and loving relationship.
So let me ask you a question. When somebody starts to feel themselves shifting out of, you know, that honeymoon phase, and it's that shift from the rose-colored glasses where they're just so passionate and like, oh, I have to be around you all the time, and you know, all those
in love, yeah.
like fluttery, butterfly-ish feelings, and that starts to fade, and now you're in that deeper part of the love. Do people often mistake that for something has changed? I don't know if I still feel the same way, that I'm missing something, right?
Absolutely. I get so many people that come to couples therapy, you know, should we just end the relationship right now? Is it bored? We're bored. Is it over? Are we too comfortable? Like, what can we do? And a lot of times they're looking for a quick fix because they perceive that something is wrong with the relationship. And honestly, just reframing it and helping people see that this is actually really valuable, that you've now moved to this next stage of your relationship where you have this really strong base to kind of build off of, and there's comfort. And comfort does not need to be synonymous with boredom. Comfort can actually be really wonderful. That being said, there are ways to infuse passion back into the relationship, and it really depends upon each individual couple as to what it looks like for them.
Can you give us a couple examples?
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, for some couples, it might be prioritizing one another more. It could be as simple as going on a date night. It could be because life maybe got in the way, their jobs, their families, just everyday tasks. It could be just spending more quality time with one another. It could involve things like physical intimacy and basically being more in sync with, what do your sex lives look like? What do you maybe want to change? What do you maybe want to introduce? Is there something that are both of your needs being met in a way that works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the most important thing is just the education of it. People understanding that because they're not getting that like dopamine spike, right? That like exciting, rewarding, like, oh, he texted me back, or oh, she got all dressed up for me, or oh, I'm going to see them tonight, right? That butterfly-ish, exciting feeling is gone. Doesn't mean that the love is gone or that the excitement in the relationship is gone or that something is wrong. I think that people feel like if I'm not as excited as I used to be, I have to try to find that excitement somewhere else or something must be wrong. And I think just understanding that for a lot of people can help bring them back into feeling more satisfied in that relationship and understanding that maybe that rewarding, exciting dopamine spike that they're looking for in their life doesn't necessarily have to come from that same place it used to come from, and that there's other places to find that.
And understanding that it's a healthy, normal process of the relationship.
1,000%. I think we get addicted to that dopamine spike. And so much of the work that I do with couples is just normalization. As you said, this is a normal part of the trajectory of a relationship, and it is okay. And, you don't need to measure your relationship against, social media or TikTok or whatever it is, because that's where we fall into like dangerous patterns of, should my relationship be like this? Should I be doing this with my partner? And also, it's amazing when you think about the dopamine spikes, how quickly we are to rewrite history. Because as you mentioned, the excitement that you feel when someone texts you back, like in the beginning of a relationship. So months out, we remember that. But then if you think about it, what about those moments where you're like
waiting
pacing,
and refreshing and looking.
Pacing in your living room, like, wait, where's the text? Where's the text? Where's the text? Like, that also occurred. So it wasn't all positive. We somehow block out those aspects of it. But this is actually moving into a much more stable, wonderful, relaxed space in which partners get to learn more about one another on a deeper level.
I think that's a really great point, because the reality is that there's so much, I think, positive in the fact that without question that text is going to come without worrying about it, right? Like if I were to think about like the beginning of my relationship with my husband that I'm married to now, I say that because I've had two, in case you're wondering why I said that. Second husband. But if I think about like the beginning of our relationship, several years ago, wondering, am I going to hear from him and all of that, there was definitely uncomfort, right? There was discomfort and pain in that. And then when it came, I got the dopamine spike and it was exciting. So like if he texts me now, I'm not going to be like, ooh, there's a text from Mark. I'm so excited. But there is, poor Mark. It's really exciting when you text me, Mark, I promise. But there is just so much, I think, merit to the fact that I have this safety and of knowing that I don't have to wait for or wonder if that text is coming, that it's always coming, because there's that other person out there that loves me, that is thinking about me, that is there for me no matter what. And I don't have to wonder
Yes.
if I'm going to get the text. So maybe it's not as exciting when I get it because I'm not in the pain of not having it or wondering if it's coming. So
Right.
the reason why it's so exciting when you get it is because it's bringing you out of your pain.
Absolutely.
But you're not in your pain in the first place. So you don't have the dopamine spike of the text because there was no pain. And I think that's the important part.
Right. You're
for
not
us to-
cycling as much.
Right.
You're just kind of, enjoying the relationship that is.
Right.
And sometimes people get addicted to that.
The
It's like,
pain.
and research has actually shown that people who are in that phase, that honeymoon phase, experiencing the limerence, their brain waves are very similar to a person who is diagnosed with OCD. So when you feel like during those periods of time where you're like always thinking about them, always waiting for that next text, we actually are. So like it's
Yep.
we live it in our bodies and our brains. Our moods shift with their moods, and there's just something nice about kind of moving from the I to the we in the relationship, getting to like integrate your lives in a really meaningful way.
Yeah, right. We're moving out of that uncertainty and the pain. So bringing us back to what you had said originally, right? That love is a variety of different emotions coming together and bringing us into connection because we have so many different needs. So I wonder for some people if that's a need that they have, the need for uncertainty, the need to get relief from pain or to get some sort of validation. And once the validation is just certain and it's there, do they then feel like something is missing? And
I
they're
was thinking that too. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
But, like from a scientific kind of researchy perspective, I mean, if that honeymoon phase lasts a year and a half, give or take, like statistically, are there more breakups like after, at that point when you're not getting that anymore? Do people just decide to, kind of leave and go pursue that with someone else because they need that constant dopamine rush?
that unhealthy attachment
Yep.
style, I guess, is what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I'm not sure specifically at that point, but because there's so many differences, like other confounding variables, but if they are not building that secure base, that companionate love behind that honeymoon phase, that is going to be the point in time where a couple is most likely to break up.
It's so funny to hear the term confounding variables, like when talking about like love and relationships. You're such a scientist.
Yes.
Yeah, literally.
But it's amazing though too to think of love as a science and to think of the science behind the relationships. That's really kind of fascinating because I think, you think of sort of emotions as feelings and not tangible and not quantifiable the way science can kind of do that.
And I like to kind of leave room that it's both a science and an art because I don't want it to become something where it's like, here is the algorithm to help you fall in love,
Check-off
which we have
list and-
tried
yep.
to do that. By we, I mean relationship scientists in the field. And it is impossible to predict with 100% certainty whether or not two people will fall in love. There are no good algorithms for compatibility as much as we might try. But it is important to both honor kind of like the magical emotional experience of love. But if we ignore the scientific side, we're kind of robbing ourselves because there's so much research that we can actually use to help us improve our communication, improve the way that we show up in relationships, which can then improve the outcome.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know that aside from the science, right, you do actually do the therapy with couples, right, as a marriage and family therapist. And you mentioned a couple of modalities that you use, right, attachment theory and EFT. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the work that you do and communication styles and how you help these couples that might be struggling a little bit?
Absolutely. So for this, I really love both EFT, but especially John Gottman's work. And they kind of go hand in hand, the Gottman method and EFT. I first came across John Gottman's work when I was just kind of an academic teaching psychology at a college. And he did a lot of like physiological research, basically trying to understand the difference between masters and disasters when it came to married couples. And in his work, he was able to predict divorce with over 93% accuracy, which
Wow.
is like unheard of in social science. And he basically used to have couples come to his love lab, which if you kind of think
Love
about
lab.
it, it's like real world. Like people would move into an apartment. It would be like outfitted with cameras, all with consent, of course.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, it's a little much. It's a little much. But he would basically watch couples interact on hot button topics for them and, kind of look at what communication led couples to thrive and then what led to them breaking down. And he came up with the 4 horsemen. This is something that if I have a couple, most couples come to me because they say they have communication issues. I argue it's often something a little bit deeper. That's kind of the symptom of something deeper, but I'll leave that on the side for a moment.
Let them think that.
Yeah. But when it comes to communication, just understanding the 4 horsemen and how it can erode a relationship is so important. And research has actually shown just teaching couples what the 4 horsemen are and the antidotes to them makes them less likely to employ them in their communication. And those are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And contempt is kind of the most problematic one. And when contempt shows up in your relationship, that's when there's going to be a dissolution.
So what could you give us as an example for how you see typically, like in a typical couple that might come into your office, how contempt shows up?
Yeah, so I love having couples do enactments. I'm just like, take me right into the last fight. Like, I want to be there. I want to see it's, and I will stop them because it's not about, litigating the details of the case. I don't need to know, if you texted at 101 or 102 or 103. I need to know how you were feeling and what the nature of that communication was between the two of you. Like, how caustic was it?
Because they will get very stuck in the logistics and they want to read the text to you.
Like, I texted first. No, I texted first. I don't care.
Doesn't matter.
How did you both feel? Like, what was going on in that text exchange? So, criticism is basically just attacking a person's character. So, you left the dishes out last night because you're such a slob. Now you're going after the person, calling them a slob, rather than leaving it as I am frustrated about the dishes and I'm already running late in the morning and now I have another task to do. So the antidote to that is using I language, of course, focusing on the behavior rather than attacking the individual. Then you have, so criticism, contempt. Contempt is criticism coming from a place of superiority. This is really the worst one that leads to the breakdown in relationships. And basically there's a fine line between sarcasm and just being a jerk. This is when a lot of people love that witty banter and they don't realize when they have crossed over from being witty to being mean and just not nice to one another. So, yeah, of course you did that. You're just like your mother. Like whatever that, if there's like some sort of strained relationship in the family there, it's intended to hurt the other person. Again, the antidote to that is using I language. The antidote to that is also creating a culture of appreciation and respect in the relationship. Defensiveness is, if someone points something out, instead of owning it, throwing it back. Well, I left the dishes in the sink because you left the bathroom a mess. So the antidote, of course, is owning your responsibility in something. And finally, stonewalling. Stonewalling, more often than not in heterosexual relationships, is done by the man. And this is when a person just completely shuts down during an argument. So this is a classic example, and I've seen this so many times play out during my therapy sessions, where one person, the one who's stonewalling, is just completely flooded. They have a blank expression on their face. The other person perceives this as, you don't care, you don't like me,
disinterest,
you're not listening. So they get louder and angrier, and then more caustic, more criticism, more contempt start to roll in. And here, take a break. Literally take a break. 20-minute break can do wonders for a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. Do you feel like, when you talk about attachment work, do you feel like you see with certain attachment styles more of a tendency to do some of these different things for some
Like
people
one
than
versus the other?
others?
Yeah, so I think that and I don't view it, I know a lot of people kind of talk about it and like, are you avoidant? Are you anxious? Are you secure? I kind of view it as continuums.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are showing up with a lot of anxiety in the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
you are definitely more likely to employ some of these because you're just trying to provoke a response from the other person. A lot of also the education that I do when I'm bringing this into the therapy setting is having people kind of break out of what they think they know about themselves. Like, I took this online quiz and I am anxiously attached, therefore I show up in this way. With the attachment styles, it's more like attachment related behaviors that show up in different environments. So if you're in a place where you feel safe and supported by other people, your behaviors are going to look a lot more securely attached.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's like, I wonder, people who are coming in with these styles, right, where they are stonewalling, or if they have contempt, right, if they're responding the way that they are, what do you find often is underlying that is causing that person to show up that way, where they're, they love this person, right? And that's one of the things sometimes when I'm working with couples, I'll say, you love this person, right? You've joined together and sharing a life together because you love this person, you care about this person. Your intentions are never really purposely to hurt the other person, and yet your actions are purposely hurting the other person, right? So what is showing up for you in these moments that is causing you in that moment, like to say, of course you would do that because you're just like your mother, right? That person in that moment, there's a part of them showing up that wants to hurt, right? So what is it that they're getting out of that? Why are they doing that? And how do you help them to really let go of that style?
I mean, first off, what you just did and said, like, that is the biggest piece, right? Is reminding people you care about each other. It may not be showing up in these moments, but if you are here, and of course, every couple's goal is different, but if you're here with the goal of working on your relationship or strengthening your relationship, you want to be together. You care about one another. So we got to bring you back to that place and just kind of having them stop and realize that they're not on opposing teams. That in and of itself is like just an incredible intervention. But I think it's really drilling down into what attachment injury is there that's causing this? Because a lot of times that lashing out, that's intended to provoke a response.
Yep.
I'm feeling like you're not present in this relationship. I'm feeling like maybe you're looking elsewhere or we're drifting apart. Like, I need anything. If I can't get you to turn towards me and like act in a caring manner, I'll take anything I can get. So if it's to start
the opposite,
right, I'll take a
just
fight.
to have a reaction and a connection and a response.
Yeah. And a lot of people tend to think that like the breakdown of relationships is something like a big fight, a big blow up, infidelity, like so, and that of course it does happen. I see a lot of couples that go through that. But one of the things that is the biggest cause of the end of relationships is that dissolution over time. It's kind of like that soul drifting apart. You become different people.
We grew apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find with a lot of the couples I work with is that there's pain there because they feel the drift and they are misinterpreting, some of their partners just going through the motions of life because they're stressed with work or kids or finances or whatever is going on as you don't love me anymore. I'm not important to you anymore. I'm not the center of your world anymore. And so they want their partner to understand their pain, and they don't know how to communicate that pain. And so they communicate it by trying to inflict that pain onto the other person. If I say something hurtful to you, you'll now feel my pain. You'll experience my pain. Now you'll understand how I feel because I've just told you you're just like your mother who you hate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's so hard to get ahead of this. I mean, people kind of assume that it's easy to do, like, oh, just have a conversation. But one, sometimes we're not even aware of the pain and where it's coming from. We just like, we know in our bodies, like we're uncomfortable, like we're not feeling loved. We can't necessarily articulate it. So it's not that easy to just turn to your partner and be like, okay, we need to prioritize each other. You know, like
they have no idea.
Right. They just,
I'm lashing out at you because
Exactly.
I'm actually hurt inside. And it's a childhood trauma that I'm carrying with me that is making me respond this way.
Oh, everyone doesn't do that? No. Just me?
Yeah.
just the therapist.
Yeah.
So we can't necessarily articulate it. Even if we can articulate it, having that conversation is so incredibly vulnerable because I'm feeling this way. Is my partner feeling this way? Is there something wrong with me? Or I also just don't want to like poke the bear. Like I don't want to say that there's a problem if my partner doesn't think that there's one.
Or are they capable of really understanding or holding space? You know,
True.
sometimes therapists will come to me that work at my practice, you know, looking for supervision around working with couples. And they'll say, you know, if one member of the couple starts to open up about their trauma, is it safe for them to do that? Should I allow that individual work? And I'll say it can move mountains if their partner is ready and capable of bearing witness to that work.
Absolutely.
If the other member of the couple is not, and they're going to be like, what has that got to do with anything? And they're going to get angry and shut it down, then it's not a safe space for them to do that work. But if you can open up and talk about your childhood trauma and talk about how you're showing up the way you're showing up because of what's being triggered for you, and your partner can say, wow, I didn't realize that I was making it all about me. And now I'm realizing that
What
this is
you're bringing
really
to the table,
triggering for you, and it's not about me, right? That can be so healing in the relationship.
And that's a big leap for a person to take.
Yeah.
To kind of like expose themselves in that way with another person present. Even if this is a person who they've been in love with for a period of time, you never quite know if a person is capable of showing up for you in the way you need at that time.
Yeah, because they might have their own trauma showing up to be like, wait a minute, my inner child is sitting in this room. There's no room for yours, right? Because yours is 8, but mine's 3, right? So the 3-year-old has no empathy for your 8-year-old, right? And, you know, that 3-year-old needs to throw the tantrum first, right? So as the therapist, how do you navigate that?
I don't know.
It's hard. Yeah.
It's incredibly challenging. I mean, as the therapist, I basically am providing a container, a safe place for these people to be able to explore any of their attachment wounds, individual or created as a couple. And it's also about really slowing down the exchange, because so much of what happens with couples outside of a therapeutic session is just, again, it's like litigating a case. 2 people are getting louder and they're going for the jugular and employing all of those things that they know can easily win an argument.
Yeah.
So just creating that space where you can really like drill down, this is how they're feeling, or this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm trying to convey to you, and this is what I need you to hear, and this is how I need you to support me. Even if the answer is I don't know, it's basically creating that safe space for both people to bear witness to one another and come up with a plan of action that works for them so they can move forward if that's what they choose to do.
I think even just kind of educating them, you kind of fall into these default communication ways. Like, so, you know, you've got that 1 hour a week where you're with the therapist, like, I feel this when you do that. But, you know, the other 6.5 days a week, you know, you're returning back to the way in which you communicate. And like, you know, you left the dishes out because you're a slob and you hate me.
Absolutely. And then there's
I had
also
to add that in too, because it's not just
There's also those times too where like outside of session, people can weaponize therapy speak.
Yeah.
So it's
I've
like you
seen
need
that.
to watch out for that too, where it's just like, hold on, you know, as a therapist, like Marissa would say right now, we need to take a break. Exactly. I feel that you're being a jerk. And it's like, no, that's not how we practice.
use it.
Right.
Right. Or even worse, well, Marissa would agree that you're a jerk.
Exactly. And I've definitely experienced that before. People come back into session and be like, I employed everything that you told me, and this is why my partner is wrong because of A, B, and C. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute.
He
like,
stonewalled and he
Exactly.
did this. He brought contempt in.
Yeah, they'll use it against you. Have you had patients come in and they'll say that you said something that you know you didn't say because it's the way they heard it, because it's serving that purpose for them, and then you have to kind of say,
I've experienced it not so much with me, and I don't think that that's because that's not happening with me. I'd like to say I'm so clear in my communication, but I know they're not admitting it to me. I have experienced it where if I'm seeing a couple and both of them have individual therapists, they may relay my individual therapist said that I am right in how I'm arguing with my partner because, and they're each kind of using their individual therapist.
Yeah.
And I mean, one, is that actually what was communicated? It may have been, but I have to remind people that in individual therapy, they're getting everything distilled through your individual perspective. So it's a very different setting. And then I'll try to figure out a way, like, how can we bring that information and work with it?
Right. Yeah, but that's also why it's so important for individual therapists to know, as much as you want to align with your patient, you have to know you're only getting some of the information, right? We always have to be curious.
Oh, absolutely.
About what else is going on. Not that we think our patients are lying to us, but they're coming in with their perspective. And their perspective is going to be coming from
Their
right?
perspective.
Their
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
their experiences, and their attachment styles, and their wounds, and how they see the world, which isn't always going to be with 100% clarity, because that's just the human experience.
Absolutely. And I think a healthy level of challenging, of course, it depends upon who the client is and the type of rapport you've built, but a healthy level of just kind of like pushing back and trying to like, is that actually like how you experienced it? What else? Because like that's kind of what separates, I think, the person to person therapy from something more like using like ChatGPT, where it's very like a sycophant. Like it's all like validation.
Yeah.
You're right. Like it's to achieve growth, you need to be challenged.
Yeah.
To be forced to, kind of look at that and go, how might someone else interpret that?
Exactly.
Is that actually how it
Yeah.
happened? And really looking at that.
Yeah. So for people that are listening or watching us, what are some like what's some of the low hanging fruit? Like what's some things that people who maybe are not in therapy, who are really maybe struggling a little bit in their relationships and their communication styles, or maybe assigning meaning to their partners that might not be accurate, and feeling hurt when they maybe don't necessarily need to be. What are some things that are really important for people to understand about themselves and about relationships in general that can help them lean into a healthier, I guess, communication style or a way of being in that relationship that could be helpful for them?
I'm a big fan of just educating yourself. Like if you want to get self-help books, if you want, of course, you need to kind of think about the source of it. There's so many like Attached, Love Sense, any of John or Julie Gottman's books, I think, are fantastic. It goes through communication styles, basic relationship principles. I think that psychoeducational piece is incredibly, incredibly important. The other thing that I think for people to understand is therapy is always appropriate. A lot of people think that like you have to be at this point of crisis in a relationship to go to see a therapist, or there has to be something wrong. And you can go proactively to build skills, to learn, to strengthen a partnership. And maybe somewhere along that journey, you might find some areas where you're falling short, or you want to set some specific goals. And, in the initial meetings with your clinician, you will figure out a path forward that works for you. So go to therapy. Go to therapy. It's good.
Don't wait until something's wrong and it has to
Exactly.
become like reparative.
That's actually what happens with a lot of couples too, is that unfortunately, there's been some great research looking at the stages of breaking up or breakdown in a relationship. And a lot of couples first acknowledge the problem and then seek out support at the point in which one person, often the initiator of this process, is mentally and emotionally out of the relationship. And because of that, they may be going to therapy and they may be trying, but they're not really in good faith going through the process.
I think sometimes that person is kind of just like, I want to give myself permission to leave. And this is that last stage so that I can rid myself of the guilt of not trying by saying I tried.
I've done everything I could.
Yeah.
Now it's okay for me to leave.
I can relate to that. You know, with my first marriage, I had reached a point, I called it the point of no return, where I got to a place where I said, there's so much damage done here that I don't want it to be better. I don't want to love this person again.
And that's brave.
Yep.
That's brave. That's very difficult to do. And when you admit it to yourself, and then often like when you admit it to like when you verbalize it out loud to one other person, like that is okay. Like now I'm no longer going back and forth and thinking about what should my next move be. I now know.
I know I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I definitely see those people that come into therapy where they're not really there. They're going through the motions of being there because they want to be able to say that they tried, but there's been so much damage, right? And I think, like you said, the damage is in the communication, right? They have spent so much time deliberately saying things that are hurtful to one another because they're hurting.
That's the way that they know how to relate to one another.
Yeah.
Without that, there may be nothing left.
Right.
So this is just like the only way that they can engage. And that's why, honestly, when I do phone consultations for new clients who are couples, I make sure that I speak to both members of the couple. Because I will often have one person call and say, my partner and I want to, and then I'll say like, you know, like I want to better understand where your partner is coming into this, because I can work with resistance. Most therapists can work with resistance, but it's when the person is, I am only here because I was told I need to. If there's a complete shutdown, maybe it's not the right time. I'm not saying it's not the right time for therapy at all, but maybe it's not the right time to engage in couples therapy. Perhaps some individual work should be done first before getting you into the same space so that we can at least work towards a common goal, even if that goal is disentangling from the relationship, co-parenting, going your separate ways and living your best lives. Effective couples therapy does not mean that both people are walking out holding hands saying, I love you.
Right.
Disentangling is such a great word.
But you know what? The reality is sometimes breaking up is successful therapy.
Absolutely.
Because it's what the couple needs. And they're stuck because they feel guilty or they're scared and they really at this point need to separate.
Yeah.
But we have so many people that come in that really are at the point of wanting to end it and they just are so afraid to end it and it's just become so toxic.
Right. And then just having another person there to kind of just like mirror back to them what is occurring in their relationship, that can be so therapeutic and helpful for them.
So if that goes back to the beginning when you talked about the science of relationships in general, right? So what is that about, you know, in terms of the scientific side of it? That person, those people that are staying together that don't really want to be together, why is that happening?
I think for a lot of people, it's like the effort justification principle, essentially, which is just like, that's actually from social psychology.
Yep.
They put in so much time, so much energy, even financially, and their lives are so entwined that the idea of just leaving and starting again can be incredibly daunting. There's also the fear of, is this better than having no one at all? And what is it going to look like when I go back into the dating pool? And can I do that at this point in my life? And just that fear keeps us locked in.
Both of those answers are so depressing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the idea of staying in a relationship because it's easier or because it's so much more difficult to disentangle myself, to, you know, think about getting an apartment, what it would be like to co-parent, all of that. Or the idea of I'm staying because dating is scary, not because I genuinely love this person and want to be with them and build the rest of my life with them, but it's better than being alone.
We see that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you're thinking about, are there other alternatives there? How difficult would it be? So it's kind of like, this is better than
the alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes what we work on with people is acceptance, right? They accept that they're not entirely satisfied in the relationship, but they also accept that they don't want to leave the relationship at this point in their lives and be alone or have to divide up their assets or whatever it is. So it's about how can I accept what is and be happy with the decision I'm making to be with this person, even though I'm not entirely in love with them or totally satisfied with everything in the relationship. How can I be satisfied with my choice and be happy in my choice?
Absolutely.
Which
And
isn't the visual of, like you said before, of the couple walking out holding hands and, like, you know, going into the rainbow. It's like, you know, how can I just be okay with settling?
I like to end all of my sessions with a rainbow, honestly.
Holding hands.
No, but this is also like the fear of the unknown too,
Yeah.
because you can't promise. You're not just like an affirmational life coach in this, like saying it's going to be better and you're going to meet another person tomorrow. You can. But you also
might.
may go on a lot of terrible first dates. You also may be single for an indeterminate period of time. Like, I cannot predict the future. You cannot predict the future, but it's about equipping the person or getting the person to find what works for them to help them tolerate that discomfort.
Yeah. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it sounds like really the secrets to the healthiest relationships are being able to allow yourself the vulnerability of knowing what your part is in what might be unhealthy in your communication styles, right? Being able to say, because I think a lot of couples come in wanting to be like, I'm right. This person, they're the problem. It's them. They don't put the dishes away, or, you know, they don't, you know, validate my feelings, or, you know, they don't, you know, provide enough emotional support or whatever it is. And so, and we often, and I'm sure you experience this too, we often have couples come in where one person wants the therapist to determine who is right.
Yes.
But what would you do? What do you think? What would
I
you
am
do?
not your
Or-
mediator.
he's
Like,
wrong.
yes.
Right. Tell her she's wrong or tell him he's wrong, or, you know, they want you to be the referee between, like, but who's right here? You know, I really want him to remember that the child needs sunscreen on in the sun and he's not doing it. Just tell him he's wrong. Tell him he has to remember. And that's not our role. Right. So when the couple comes in, I think the most important takeaway from what you're talking about is be able to own where you're not perfect, be able to own where your stuff might be entering the room.
Absolutely. And when you start to see people put away their armor a little bit, and it's less about this cycle of blame and more about, well, how can we like jointly create a relationship in which we both support one another and both respect one another? When that conversation starts to shift from like you to like, I'm owning and we in terms of moving forward, you can hear it in the language. Then you know, like those small changes will add up to actually enhancing the relationship. And it doesn't happen overnight. I think that a lot of people come to therapy, you know, I want to fix X, Y, and Z in 3 sessions
6
and
weeks
last.
to a better, healthier marriage.
Exactly. I've seen a lot of those kinds of things advertised. And like, sure, you can learn some tools and stuff like that, but to be able to apply them consistently and enact long-lasting change, you need small shifts that are practiced over time.
And even change, right? It's defining what change is. Are we going to change the other person, or are we going to change how we interpret the other person, or how we allow ourselves to be affected by the other person, or the meaning we assign to the other person's behavior, instead of saying, well, you just have to stop doing this because I don't like how it makes me feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like that, like I'm reacting to that because it's a lot of people when they hear change, it is about changing the other. And the only person you can change is how you react to them, not them.
That's such an important takeaway, that whole statement. You know,
Yep.
the idea that you're not going to change the other person, and the point of therapy isn't to change anybody else. It's how you respond to that.
Yeah. And we can change ourselves. We can change how we respond, which in turn could appear to the other person that we are changing. But really what we're changing is our understanding of the other and how we see the other, right? I think that one of the most effective things that I can do in my work with couples is helping them see that the other person's actions is not intentioned to be hurtful, and that they're hurt and they're showing up in a way that is, their past traumas or their needs or their fears are showing up in the room, whether it be in their kitchen or in their bedroom or wherever it may be, or in the therapy room, right? It's you're taking this person's actions personally. But is it really about you, or is it about what's showing up for them? If we can make the space to really see our partner with clarity and not internalize it and take it personally, aren't we less affected by them? And can we understand that the way that person is showing up is just about them wanting us to understand how they feel, and they're just not communicating it in the most effective way.
So ultimately, not that we're biased or anything, but go to therapy. Therapy is good.
Oh my gosh, it is so good. Right. But I think what you said before is so important is you don't have to wait until you're on the verge of divorce.
Right.
You can have a really healthy, amazing relationship, but still opt to go to a couple of sessions just to be like, listen, I want you to understand my trauma a little bit better.
Absolutely. And I think the stigma is shifting with each generational cohort. I get a lot of Gen Z clients who are just like, I'm about to move in with my partner. And before even cohabitating, like, we want to figure out how we can set ourselves up for success. And I'm like,
that's amazing.
Wow.
All right,
it's a whole different mindset because they've grown up with a whole different kind of viewpoint of what therapy
is normalized. Yep. And I've even seen, like, in the past, I forget which app it was, but like one of the dating apps had, like, you can put like a little banner on your profile that's like, I'm in therapy.
Oh, wow.
So it's actually just kind of like, I am working on myself. Of course, that could always be misused, and people might be trying to signal something that they're not actually doing that inner work. But a lot of my Gen Z clients will, say, I'm in therapy. It's very important. I wish my mom would go to therapy. My dad would go to therapy. And like, I'm encouraging everyone in my life. And I'm
We've got a friend that wouldn't consider dating anyone who wasn't actively in therapy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Makes sense. But I think that really brings up a good point. Some of the people I've worked with over the years, I've seen issues where one member of the couple, like, they'll, talk about trauma bonding. Mm-hmm. They'll come together and connect over trauma. And then one person goes to therapy and does a lot of work on themselves, and they have this shift and their change in their life and how they're showing up and their attachment style and everything. And the other person doesn't. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, I have a couple I'm working with right now where, it's actually not the couple I'm working with. I'm working with the wife in this scenario. She's my individual client, and she has done an enormous work on herself in therapy, and her husband has done no work on himself. And she has grown and changed herself in so many ways, where the unhealthy relationship patterns that suited her in the beginning no longer suit her. And she's now at the point where she's just like, I'm exhausted by his lack of movement. And I'm like, you can't force him to go to therapy and to evolve. You've evolved and he hasn't.
So he may see therapy as the problem. And even at times, even though it's really sounds like, enhancing her life in a major way, it's destabilizing, because it's like, now all of a sudden I am seeing all of these things that are not suiting me well. That's why it's so important to, like, manage expectations about, like, the shifts that will occur. It's not going to just be your life. It's going to affect all of the people around you, because think about when you start working with someone on how to set boundaries, right? The boundaries about the person themselves, but everyone is now perceiving these new boundaries that have been put into place. It's affecting them, and that's going to change relationships.
It does. Yeah. And so it's about then shifting into, right, this new role, right? And so, like, for this woman, in particular, she's like, I really love my husband. And I'm like, well, so where does that leave you then, right? It's having to accept, right, that you've evolved, that he hasn't, that he still engages, right, in these sort of tantrum-like behaviors, and that you no longer join the tantrum. So now what's your new role, right, in these tantrums?
And then does that role work for you?
Right.
Or is it time to maybe move on?
Mm-hmm.
and
Disentangle.
Disentangle, right?
Uncouple.
Right? Or stay in it, but accept
Right.
that this is going to come up.
Right.
And what boundary do you need to set for yourself when this is coming up? Because you don't want to drag yourself back into this unhealthy pattern that, was the reason you brought yourself into therapy in the first place. Yeah. It could be hard.
Oh, it's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Therapy is a very challenging process that requires a lot of vulnerability. And that's why finding the right therapist is important too, because everyone has a different style and you need to feel safe to be able to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand also that it is a process, right? They're not going to come into their first or second session and be like, all right, I've been given a bunch of tools and strategies and I'm going to go home and practice these things and now everything's going to be better. I think people really need to understand that there's a lot of deep underlying stuff, right? If they have a certain, communication style, there's a reason why. There's always a why.
Yes.
They say the things that they say. And until they get to a place where they can make themselves vulnerable enough to understand why, for example, they get so triggered by the dishes, right?
Yes.
That they're not going to really be able to put that past them. It's not just as simple as talk about the dishes in a different way. You also have to understand why the dishes were so triggering in the first place.
Use paper plates, obviously. No one has to clean them.
Right, there's never a quick fix.
Because Right, and that's why a lot of people who come in, they're like, communication is the issue. So it's not just teaching them about the 4 horsemen. That is helpful, but that is a skills-based, surface level intervention.
Yep.
It's about, well, why are you employing this communication tactic with one another? What is going on behind the scenes? And once you can dig into that. Now, look, if someone is saying that they only want to commit to 5 sessions and, that's all that they have the capacity for, the finance, whatever it is, right? There are many different factors that come into play. Yep. Can we work with that? Absolutely. And we can start to maybe dig in a little bit. We could definitely teach you some skills, but it's also about managing the expectations that real change does take time and effort.
Yeah.
I think we live in a world now where we're so used to this kind of instant gratification and this immediate fix that the idea of putting in the work and the work is long term.
Oh, absolutely.
And the kind of fix you're going to get in a 5-week kind of limited session, there might be improvements, but, doing a year or 2 years or 5 years in therapy, really working on yourself is going to be a completely different kind of, long-lasting change.
Yeah. And I always say to people, even though it is lengthy, and it does take time to really get to the root of things, it's not like you're going to spend the next 2 years in pain and then at the end of year 2, magically everything's better, right? You're improving as you go.
Right.
And so then there's different levels of making things better. And you can start with the tools-based stuff and start implementing things quickly that really start to bring some relief, and then start doing the deeper work that bring you to that next level of relief, right? So you are feeling better along the way. It's a journey.
Everyone's journey is so unique.
Yeah.
So it's revisiting, what are the goals? How are we making progress towards those? Is it working for you? What might we need to shift? Because it's collaborative.
Yep.
So it's, and you can change the cadence of how often a person sees you and what the therapy session looks like. So it's never going to look the same from one month to the next.
Yep. Absolutely. So, it's amazing how quickly this hour has flown. I think that we've really talked about and hit so many really, really important things. So, I think there's really 2 important questions I want to ask you before we end. Number 1, is there anything that you feel was really important that you wanted to bring up today or point out or to summarize or anything for our listeners that we didn't get to say? And the other thing is there any way in which you want our viewers or listeners to know how they can find you or reach you or anything that you want to leave them with so that they know where to find you?
Sure. So I think that we actually did a really great job of kind of bringing it all home towards the end, because it's about, therapy is incredibly beneficial. It doesn't have to be at a point of distress. It could be at any point in time to strengthen things. It's not just about the dishes. There's often some other underlying concerns that may be affecting you individually, may be affecting your partnership, and finding the right clinician to go on that journey with is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much my work is taking the psychoeducational pieces, applying them to the therapeutic setting, and also doing therapy in conjunction with all of that. And if anyone is interested in getting in touch with me, my handle is at Marissa with one S. So MARISA TCOHEN, Marissa T. Cohen. And you could find my website and all other information about events that I'm doing in the area.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Any last
No.
thoughts or questions or anything
No.
from you over there?
No. Now I want to go and read more about the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do actually call asking for therapists who are trained in Gottman because, you know, it's definitely a very well-known and
Absolutely.
respected modality of therapy. But the reality is there are lots of different, couples modalities, and Gottman can work really well for some, but not others. So don't feel like if you've tried Gottman and it didn't work for you that
The relationship is doomed.
you're
and it's over.
doomed. There are, you speak to the therapist, find the right
It's
person.
about the relationship with the clinician first
Yep.
and foremost. That therapeutic alliance is really what's going to determine how well therapy is going to work. And as far as the interventions, most clinicians, I know I'm making a very big, broad statement here, but
Yeah.
most clinicians, they're eclectic. Like they're bringing in a bunch of different things.
100%.
They need to be able to adapt it to you and your needs.
Yep.
You recognize something's not working and you take a different tactic.
Right.
and
If you have someone who's like just super rigid, that may not work, probably
Yeah.
won't work for you.
Yeah, I do think the most important thing, the last thing I'll say is if you are noticing that you really just feel like this is the other person and it's not me, and you just feel so victimized and you feel so hurt, notice that. Really be aware of how triggered you are by this other person and start there. Start with what's showing up for me, what's happening for me, why am I so triggered by somebody else's actions, and can I pull myself away from that and really look at this other person with clarity and try to understand what's happening for them instead of looking at it through the lens of what's happening to me. And can I start there? And I usually start there with my really difficult couples where the person is just all about like, nope, it's just all them. It's all them. They just have to stop what they're doing and everything will be fine. It's notice, right, what's happening for you, why you're so triggered, and start to be curious about why the other person is showing up the way they are instead of being angry at them. And sometimes that's a really good starting off point. But I think that we really touched on so many things. I appreciate you being here and sharing your expertise and your science with our listeners.
Thank you.
Great.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was great. So I guess we're done.
We are done.
We're done. So with that said, you guys know the drill. We are on YouTube and Spotify and Amazon and Apple and iHeartRadio, all the places.
Only app I know.
Where you can listen. Please subscribe, share our podcast if you found this helpful. You know somebody struggling in their relationship, share it, send it along, help others, help us, help the podcast. And that's that. So again, I am Stacy.
And I'm Heather.
And we are Why Do People Do That? We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Why Do People Do That is recorded and produced by Press Record Studios.